China's economy is facing significant challenges, and there are concerns that it could be on the verge of a major crisis. Some experts are even describing it as a ticking time bomb due to the debt supercycle that originated from the U.S. and Europe following the 2008 financial crisis. It appears that this crisis is now knocking on China's door. Officially, China's previously unstoppable economic growth has come to a halt. Despite being the world's second-largest economy, their financial system is showing signs of unraveling. Youth unemployment has reached such alarming levels that it's ceased to be reported. Moreover, there's a looming risk of an even more severe property crisis than in the past. One of their largest property developers is on the brink of default, and this situation is just the beginning of what may unfold. Understanding the specifics of what's happening in China and why their situation continues to deteriorate is crucial. Equally important is recognizing the potential impact this crisis could have on the United States. The more we delve into this matter, the graver it appears. If you find value in the research and information shared in this video, all that's asked in return is to please consider hitting the like button or subscribing. These actions greatly support our channel. Also, if you want free stocks, you can also open an account with Webull or Robinhood using my link in the description and deposit any deposit into your account, and you'll earn free stocks. After you earn your free stocks, you can withdraw the money you deposited, and you can sell your stocks as well. That's free money. Until recently, China was on an unstoppable path to economic growth. This was primarily due to its leading role in international production, substantial foreign investments, and rapid productivity over the past 3 decades. It all started with a pivotal diplomatic move in 1979, when China established relations with the United States, subsequently opening doors to the global community. Once this diplomatic channel was created, investments from countries worldwide flooded into China. These investments focused on Chinese infrastructure and harnessed the advantages of low-cost labor, channeling much-needed funding into previously inaccessible regions. During this period, China's growth was so remarkable that in 2001 it joined the World Trade Organization, aiming to further strengthen its ties with the United States. However, things didn't go exactly as anticipated. For the United States, it became evident that the demand for affordable Chinese goods grew at an astonishing rate. Consequently, a multitude of products were outsourced elsewhere, and corporations moved a staggering 6 million jobs overseas to maximize their profits. While this shift did lead to lower costs for everyday items used in the United States, the benefits for China were monumental. With increased global trade and foreign investments, more than 400 million people were lifted out of poverty. Moreover, China's economy is now 11 times larger than it was in 2001. In 2009, it became the world's leading exporting nation and was hailed as an economic miracle as its growth outpaced that of any other nation. However, not everything was as straightforward as it appeared on the surface. As China's growth surged, so did its relative power compared to other nations. This newfound power allowed them to exert influence over businesses, increasing their control. Additionally, forming alliances with China became progressively challenging. In fact, members of the World Trade Organization have accused China of providing illegal state subsidies to businesses for exporting their products, showing favoritism to companies that source from Chinese manufacturers and manipulating supply chains by imposing taxes on raw materials. Furthermore, it's been alleged that they intentionally devalued their currency by as much as 40% to incentivize other countries to purchase their goods at discounted rates. This strategy led to artificial economic growth that ultimately proved unsustainable, somewhat akin to the current situation. The challenges go beyond economic concerns. China faced a significant issue with youth unemployment, so much so that they stopped reporting it. However, this complex situation traces its origins back to 1998, when China embarked on a major expansion of higher education. This initiative involved substantial funding to build schools, hire professors, and provide scholarships to those in need. The overarching objective was to establish a knowledge-based economy that could meet the demand for a more educated workforce, allowing China to compete on a global scale. Consequently, Chinese universities admitted around 1.6 million students in 1999, marking a staggering 47% increase from the previous year. This expansion aimed to democratize higher education, making it accessible to anyone with even a modest interest including those residing in rural areas or hailing from low-income backgrounds. However, as we can observe today, there's a significant issue. Higher education expanded at a faster pace than the job market could accommodate. This means that there are more college graduates than there are available jobs for them, resulting in a considerable portion of Chinese young adults being unemployed. At present, the unemployment rate for individuals aged 16 to 24 has surged to 21%. This rate's been consistently increasing since the survey was initiated in 2018. To put it into perspective, the unemployment situation has deteriorated to the extent that lottery sales have seen a 50% boost, as many young people now view hitting the jackpot as their only means to achieve financial independence. In response to these challenges, more and more Chinese youths are opting to remain at home to care for their parents or fulfill the role of a stay-at-home son or daughter because alternative employment opportunities are scarce. This situation is further complicated by the projection that 30% of China's population will be over the age of 65 by the year 2050. China, on the other hand, contests these claims and insists that the rising unemployment figures are a result of data collection surveys that need refinement and enhancement. Many people tend to perceive this as an attempt to spin the narrative in a more positive light. However, I'll leave it to your judgment, and you can draw your own conclusions on the matter. However, this is just the beginning of the story. Another pressing issue is the real estate crisis. Over the past decade, China's experienced a massive real estate bubble. Chinese citizens tend to invest their money in property as a form of financial security. This high demand has driven property prices to increase by double digits year after year. To put this into perspective, China was constructing 5 times as many homes as both the United States and Europe combined. Despite this, supply was so limited that many cities resorted to a lottery system to allocate homes, with some odds as low as 1 in 60. This led to a staggering 70% of the country's wealth being tied up in real estate, more than twice as high as the United States. During this period of rapid price escalation, property developers would pre-sell units where buyers would begin making payments for properties that hadn't even been built yet. The cost was often exorbitant, with some buyers paying up to 23 times their annual income for a home. Mortgages sometimes ate up more than half of their take-home pay, prompting some to borrow money from friends and family to fulfill their home ownership aspirations. This fervent demand caused property prices to surge by 700% from 2001 to 2017. In an attempt to curb this trend, the government introduced more regulations to restrict who could obtain loans, emphasizing that homes should be for living rather than speculative investment. However, these measures came too late. As China's economy began to slow down, property developers found it increasingly challenging to raise capital to complete their ongoing projects. They struggled to finish construction on many units, and the initial problems with property giant Evergrande quickly spread to over 320 projects across approximately 100 cities. This led to protests, disrupted markets, and compelled authorities to intervene with banks and developers to quell the unrest. Fast forward to the present. Evergrande has filed for bankruptcy, and an even larger property developer, Country Garden, faces similar concerns. There are warnings of potential default on debts that amount to as high as $230 billion, spanning nearly 1 million unfinished apartments. In response, China's begun lowering interest rates to stimulate economic growth. However, as seen in previous situations, these efforts often come too late. Over 50 developers have already fallen behind, resulting in another economic crisis, deflation. For those unfamiliar with deflation, it's essentially the opposite of inflation. Instead of prices rising, they fall. While this may seem beneficial, it's not. Falling prices indicate reduced demand, and when money becomes more valuable over time, people are less inclined to spend it. This further drives prices downward, creating a self-perpetuating cycle. Eventually, companies scale back production, reducing output and plunging the entire economy into a downward spiral. In China's case, consumers are displaying significant reluctance to spend money, a behavior that stems from 3 years of lockdowns. This hesitation to spend has caused prices to drop by 0.3% in July. Companies are taking notice of this trend and, in response, reducing their workforce. This reduction in jobs exacerbates the deflationary pressure by decreasing the money available for spending. Additionally, Chinese consumers are cutting back partly because the decline in housing prices has impacted their savings, much of which is tied up in real estate. Jobs linked to the housing market, once abundant, are disappearing, and the uncertainty surrounding the crisis's potential reach is making companies and small businesses wary of spending. This suggests that as the real estate market continues to decline, consumer spending is likely to worsen. As one analyst put it, we are witnessing a significant shift in what's been one of the most remarkable economic trajectories in history, particularly given that real estate comprises 30% of China's GDP. On a positive note, falling prices in China may actually assist in addressing our own inflation concerns here in the United States. Weaker foreign demand has less influence on driving up prices. However, for China and its investors, slower demand is likely to lead to reduced growth, and this will come at the expense of their citizens if and when the market collapses. Now on to the final concern, the straw that broke the camel's back, a shadow banking crisis. Unlike traditional banks, which operate under strict regulations, shadow banks operate in unregulated sectors, including hedge funds, private equity, and investment banks, without the bureaucratic constraints. However, it's important to note that these shadow banks don't function like traditional bank accounts with deposits in various accounts. Instead, they primarily cater to businesses, funds, and large investors seeking higher than average returns. Unfortunately, many of these returns were tied to the struggling real estate market. Fast forward to the present. One of China's largest shadow banks is under scrutiny for failing to meet payment obligations to 3 publicly traded companies. This situation has sparked protests outside their offices in Beijing. What makes this even more concerning is the high likelihood of contagion spreading throughout the entire market. If these companies don't receive their payments, they may struggle to meet their obligations to investors, potentially triggering a domino effect throughout the entire economy. Regarding their official statement, a potential informant mentioned that they couldn't make a public announcement due to ongoing checks on their underlying assets and efforts to recover them. Disclosing these assets for a particular product might lead to a significant reduction in their assets, which they consider irresponsible. As for how this could affect the United States, here's what you need to understand. The reassuring news is that it seems the United States has relatively minimal exposure to China's financial crisis. To put it into perspective, consider that the United States has approximately $215 billion in direct investments in China and another $300 billion in portfolio investments, which includes stocks and bonds. In total, that's roughly $500 billion in direct investments. However, when you compare this to the broader economic landscape, it becomes clear that our exposure to China is just a tiny fraction. To illustrate, the total value of the U.S. stock market stands at $46 trillion, while all U.S. real estate is valued at an additional $43 trillion. Even U.S. office buildings, which are considered a potential epicenter of the next financial crisis, are valued at $2.6 trillion. In simpler terms, any disruption stemming from our investments in China is unlikely to significantly impact our economy. Thanks for watching. Until next time.